sustainable pollinating from India. Hi, Jashan. How are
Hello.
you?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Mariana?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the World Food Design Day.
Thank you, and congratulations on organizing this.
Thank you. You're welcome. So
So,
the stage is yours.
thank you. So, normally I am in Mumbai, in India. At the moment, I am in Barcelona I'm not with Nicole at the moment, but I'm here with Nicole.
Okay.
So, I was able to catch a little bit about her safari atelier as well. So, um, since I'm not in my studio and in Mumbai, I couldn't bring physical things to show. So I'm going to leverage the digital media for us to be able to um, interact with each other. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my process, inspiration, the kind of work we do. And I have a little surprise for you and me to experience together. So a little bit about me. I'm Jashan. My name means celebration. And I like to bring that into the kind of events and experiences we host through Sugar and Space. I have a background in architecture. So at the work that we do, we combine architecture, senses, and technology to create sort of different kinds of outcomes within food and design. But we always sort of base it on two aspects. There's always an educational aspect because the work is research based and changes your perspectives around what you're eating, as well as entertainment, because at the end of the day, whether it's in a classroom setting or at the dinner table, I think if guests or participants are entertained, it helps attract them and help them enjoy the entire experience and helps them recall what they've learned as well. So, and Mariana, feel free to stop me at any time. But this was one of the questions that, we ask ourselves, and I think was very aligned with what the brief for Fork's World Food Design Day was. And it was sort of how might the design of creative food experiences activate changes towards more sustainable food systems. So I'm going to tell you about a project that we've worked on, which is called Nectar, and hopefully we can answer this question as we experience it.
Great.
So,
Very
do
nice
you
question.
practice any yoga or meditation, Mariana? Yes. So maybe you've heard of if we can take like a minute to do this together. It's something called the Brahmari Pranayama, which is basically the black bee humming meditation. Okay. So and you can also unmute yourself so we can do this together. But essentially, if you want to pop your thumbs into your ear and then cover your eyes and cheeks and just make a sort of humming sound from your throat, that'll sort of get us ready for this experience. All right, let's go. All right. So this was really special, and I wanted for us to experience this together today because just before coming to Barcelona a couple of weeks ago, I hosted Nectar in Mumbai. And it was after a long time, it was an in-person experience, and we hosted it at the yoga house. And I love always working and repeating projects with different people because it sort of brings about opportunities for, I think, expanding your views on a project from where we start when we initiate a project to where the project can go. I think it always has a sort of life of its own. And
Yeah.
since we were doing this at the yoga house, when I shared the project note with the founder of the yoga house, she sort of tied in this bee meditation into the experience before we began. And I really found that powerful because you will see that we sort of take on a little bit of the role of bees in the nectar experience. So this was just to sort of get us kick-started. So now, Mumbai, we don't have too many flowers just lying around the streets. And that also means we don't have many bees buzzing around them. But ever since I was very little, I would visit my family in Surrey in the United Kingdom. And I'm going there next month as well. And one of my favorite things to do during that spring and summer season is to walk around nature and really enjoy the colors, aromas, etc., of all the beautiful flowers that are all around. Um, And this was always something that was very special to me because it was something that was a treat, right? Being able to experience or enjoy the luxury of, well, nature was something that in an urban city as big as Mumbai in India, we don't have the sort of pleasure of. But something changed when I was at a friend's wedding at a cousin's wedding in Dubai. And I was at the buffet at breakfast. And then, of course, we've all seen, right, these honeycombs, and it was fascinating. And just like everyone else, well, quite non-mindfully, I was just mindlessly also picking a big slab of this and plopping it onto my plate and going to my table.
Wow, that's amazing.
And of course, I took the opportunity to take a sugar and space picture, which is sort of the backdrop of the city with the food in front of it. And then, of course, I couldn't end up eating the whole thing. I played with it a bit. I found the scaly texture of the honeycomb interesting, but there was no way I was going to eat a slab of this. And so my plate was taken away with this leftover, and so was everyone else at my table. And I assume hundreds of other guests eating a buffet breakfast who found this thing fascinating, but they didn't necessarily take it because they knew they wanted to consume it. So probably just that morning, they probably replaced 2 or 3 slabs of this, and probably more than 80% of it went into the bin. And that also got me sort of thinking, how could something so alive and so buzzing and such a sort of source of sustenance end up kind of, well, for lack of a better word, dead in a 5-star hotel breakfast banquet, and then end up in the bin? And isn't there something we could do about this? And I know a lot of my colleagues and other food design friends also work on projects around bees and sustainability. But we took on a little bit of a different approach. So in August 2019, that was a few months after I had got my 3D printer from the Netherlands, I decided to sort of take this inspiration of the flowers, the bees, and that learning that I had from the wedding, and try and develop an experience around, pollination. And essentially, it started off very messy, very rough and ready. But effectively, there were different elements deconstructed, and you could then pick and choose your own bites of food. So with the experience, what we do is guests start off with having tiny nectar shots. So these nectar shots could be spiked with alcohol depending on the audience, but also otherwise they're sort of diluted multiflora honey, right? Mm-hmm. And then it moves on to the host, in this case myself, plating live these different elements across an edible tablescape. Now, so this becomes a performance in itself, right? Because guests arrive to an empty table, and this is sort of done as we interact and chat with them. We also sort of lay out the whole table. And then finally, over time, it sort of evolved into a more refined version of Nectar. And there's different elements that I'll sort of take you through. So there's, of course, the 3D printed honeycomb shortbread that you can see very evidently. Apart from that, we have sort of pressed edible flour cookies. We have salted honeycomb shards, which are really bitter and have a very interesting texture. Lemon honey drizzle, a whipped wild honey cream, an upcycled rose petal jam, and then assorted fresh edible flowers. And again, why the edible flowers? Because I think in the last 4 or 5 years across social media, across culinary arts, edible flowers again seemed to pop up and become wildly popular. The thing was that there's very little education or awareness about not only, apart from it making something look pretty, they can also add specific flavors to your food. Some of them have spicy notes, some of them have bitter tones, some of them are extremely fresh and zingy. But essentially, apart from it being a visual media, I think it's an interesting thing, and I always encourage the guests to sort of pick a fresh flower with anything that they're pairing to see how it changes their experience. So essentially, just like a bee goes around flowers, from flower to flower pollinating, when guests start interacting with this experience, their hand takes on the role of the bee. And they also start pollinating as they build these sort of mouthfuls that they can personalize to their own taste, because it's not a pre-prepared proportion for them.
Great, that's amazing to feel like a bee and to think that bees exist, because many times they feel like far away. That's a great experience. Super.
And I think to go back to us answering the question of how can the design of these eating experiences really make a shift towards sustainable food education, for example. So here are a few ways that we've, in the last few years, replicated Nectar in order to hopefully answer this question. So the first thing I think is various engagement formats, right? So we host Nectar in as public events. So people of the audience, it goes out and the general public can choose to attend, right? We host it for private dinner parties, for example. Now, if we go in with the narrative that we're here to tell you about why pollinators are dying, people are not going to want this at their dinner party, right? So I think the aspect or the way that it has to be positioned and communicated depends on the context. But then we successfully managed to deliver this message along with this unforgettable experience. And then we've also hosted it in corporate formats, for example, for clients like WeWork, the Ministry of New, other kinds of community-based organizations. I think strategic partnerships are another key to making any of these experiences sort of scale. So it could be with a community-based organization, like I just mentioned, or we've done collaborations with design studios where we've sort of, the first Nectar we did was with friends of mine from architecture school, Devika and Sukriti, who are here. And we hosted Nectar as part of Freeze the Flavor, which was basically they were conducting resin art workshops. And what we did was we had people taste the dessert, and then they could freeze elements or ingredients of the dessert into resin art pieces that they could keep forever as a memory of their dessert, of their experience. Also, I think sustainable startups. So another time we hosted it was with Christine, and Christine is the founder of Bloom Bombs, which is a sustainable flower company in Mumbai. And that was, again, a great prime opportunity to sort of, for me as well, to understand about the source of flowers, how to preserve them, how to use them in ways more than just the edible flowers that we can buy from a store, for example. Another opportunity for strategic partnerships, I think, was, of course, F&B brands to bring in sponsorships, to bring in sort of more widespread hospitality engagement. So we've partnered with sustainable honey brands, for example, or we've tied in mead. I'm not sure if you know what mead is, but mead is basically like a fermented honey beer or a fermented honey alcohol. And again, that sort of ties into this whole ecosystem of bees and pollination and the byproducts that sort of come from it. Now, when it comes to communicating projects like this, I think it's super important to have novelty, right? So the 3D food printing acts as the hook to attract people who don't necessarily care or know that they care about bees and pollination, but they want to experience something cool. So that's where 3D printing can come in to the picture as well.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing also because it doesn't spread any food. But however, you cannot do this for a lot of people, but that's amazing when you eat in your house or when you do an event counting the people. So Jashan, your speech is super interesting. We could be here talking for hours. Maybe I can give you 1-2 minutes to end up if you want to close it.
Sure.
And
thank you. And then the aspect of product lines, I think if you can start tying in product lines into your experiences and pull in items like upcycling, etc., that could be a really strong way to make an impact through your experiences. And then we have an online research journal, which we've collaborated with international people to talk about edible flower education, how to preserve and work with edible flowers, and of course, how to attract bees to your urban balcony, for example. So those were some of the concluding points around how the design of food experiences can sort of help sustainable food systems. And I had a little victory in Mumbai. I started growing my own edible flowers last year.
Oh, wow.
And we attracted bees for the first time to the 11th floor of our urban home. And that's why I think that's how we can use food design for the better good.
Thank you very much. It was amazing. Actually, it's very interesting to see how through food experiences you can promote change, and you can help people start thinking about many interesting subjects that are really important nowadays. So amazing, your presentation. Thank you very much for your time. Again, I hope we can meet each other sometime.